These are the cheapest keyboards on Amazon, but are they any good? Well, yes, some of them are. Some of them. Howdy hey, I'm Hipyo Tech, and I try things so you don't have to. And in my quest to find the best budget keyboards, I bought keyboards ranging all the way from $25 up to $50. But what I didn't expect is how hard it was gonna be to actually find the best one. Because at this price point, what matters the most is what matters to you. And you're probably thinking, oh, Hipyo, I don't know what matters the most. I just want a cheap keyboard. I just want to save money. Well, stick around. I can explain everything. Now, this video began with a question. Hipyo, what's the best keyboard under $50? And, what is the best keyboard under $50? Is it the new Lemo keyboards or some random cheap Chinese board on Amazon? And if you just stumbled upon keyboards because you wanted something that sounded thawky, this might leave you with a lot of questions. So in this video, we've got a couple criteria: sound, feel, customization, and aesthetics. Now, with those criteria in mind, it was time to head over to Amazon and basically just buy whatever looked the best to me. Now, I'll go through everything later in this video, but we'll be starting with the cheapest and then working our way up to the most expensive. But as I mentioned, sometimes the most expensive isn't the best, or maybe it is, And if you're following along at home, I'll have every board linked down in the description. Let's get started. Keyboard number 1, $25. Sophie. Now, if you're trying to save the most money possible, then going with a $26 keyboard is probably not the best idea. Well, maybe not actually, because $25 keyboards have been the gold standard forever, basically. Now, I've done this challenge before in the past where I tried to upgrade the cheapest keyboard on Amazon, and in this case, I just wanted one that was good right out of the box. But you should watch that video because it's really good. But speaking of really good, keyboards have gotten really good in the 3 years since that video. And this keyboard is really pretty, actually. Wow. Now, the listing called it a 60% keyboard, but my eyeballs clearly show me that this is a 75%. And the reviews actually seemed kind of decent. Granted, they can be faked. They can be faked. Now, the first thing that really drew me to this keyboard is the gradient keycap set, because that's really pretty, and it's not a typical gamer set like some of the other boards we'll see. Now, there's no gasket performance or anything like that, and I'm not really expecting this board to be hot swappable or have any fancy features whatsoever. Now, the case is unapologetically plastic, and what were you expecting? Were you expecting metal on a keyboard that's only $25? No, that's not gonna happen on any of these. Sorry, you gotta temper your expectations here. Also, despite having a dampener in it, it feels incredibly lightweight and pretty stinking cheap. Now, these switches actually, not good. Not very good, and we'll talk about those in a second. Now, to this board's credit, it has a very, very pleasing blue translucent case, similar to an old Game Boy. It has flippy feet, which some expensive keyboards don't even have. And if you told me that this board cost $50, I would kind of believe you. Or like 140 if you were high ground. One really weird quirk is that the USB-C cable is on the side. Why? But what you're most interested in probably is, does this keyboard thawk, and does this keyboard good for gaming? And the keycaps are a double shot style, so they're gonna sound on the clackier side. Granted, they do feel like decent quality, I'm not gonna lie. Now, these very basic red switches are very womp womp. They've got quite a bit of ping to them, they don't feel very smooth, and are the biggest sacrifice that you're taking with this board. Now, a sign of a premium keyboard is whether or not it's hot swappable, meaning that you could remove the switches without, wait, it was that easy? You could just remove the switches without needing to desolder on the cheapest keyboard of the whole bunch? Are you serious? Well, yeah, and not only that, this board has standard Kale style hot swap sockets with 5-pin switch support. It's got north-facing LEDs, which kind of sucks, but we're gonna give it a pass here. It's $25. And wait, LEDs? So overall, the sound of this keyboard is not that great. The feel of this keyboard is not that great. However, the actual chassis itself is a decent option if you want to remove these switches and put in a nicer switch. Now, the software sucks, you're dealing with cheap hardware, but if you're tight on budget now and you want to upgrade later, then this could be a really good choice, as Leobog switches, which are really nice in this board, are only $25. Wait, that's like the whole price of the board though. But surely because this thing is so cheap, as we move up in the list, everything is gonna get better. And while that is true, and there will be keyboards in this list that are awesome, maybe not. What? What about my endless possibilities? Oh yeah, also did I mention it has RGB? What? Full RGB on the cheapest board on this list? Okay, now I'm really excited. But now it was time for the next keyboard, and I'll look at the Lemo keys later, because those are from Keychron. Keymove 87 SE, $32? I mean, it looks cool. Now, this is a brand that a lot of people ask me to look at, like a lot of people, and it's the Keymove K87 SE. It starts at $35 and feels really heavy, actually. It comes with an orange accent cable, which surprisingly nice, and a keycap puller. Where's the switch puller? Huh. Now, by moving up $10, this thing does actually feel a decent amount more premium. It's got 2-stage flippy feet, a way more eccentric design, like it actually feels like people put thought into this thing. And I really like the dotted look all over. Like, I think this is really cool, unless you have trypophobia, and then it's not very cool. Big scary. What made me really interested in this keyboard is that they advertise deadening foam and pre-lubed tactile switch. So when I see that, and then I see a price tag of 35 bucks, I'm pretty interested. What I noticed with this board is that they have secondary legends on tons of keycaps, which makes this board look really, really busy. But if you're someone that doesn't want to memorize macros, then it could actually be really helpful for you. Also, I am getting a deadening foam vibe with how thick and heavy this thing is. I think it's silicone. Now, earlier, you remember how I mentioned preference is important? Well, this thing is a TKL, so it's a bit bigger than a 75%. And when you're on this tight of a budget, you really need to lean into what your preference dictates. Like for me, I'm gonna lean into a board that sounds and feels the best. But for some, these double shot keycaps with Mac sub legends might just be what you prefer. Now, when I saw pre-lube tactile switch, and then I saw these brown switches, I immediately got pretty disappointed. Now, if you're new to keyboards, tactile means that there's a bump when you press down the key, and these don't have it whatsoever. Speaking of what it doesn't have, this board is not hot swappable. So if you don't like these switches, guess what? You're not replacing them. Unless you take this whole board apart and desolder it, but you probably don't have a soldering iron. So the Keymove passes the test for aesthetics with this really pretty blue and orange look, but the overall sound and feel leaves a lot to be desired, and the customizability is none. Well, I guess not none, because you can replace the keycaps, and you've got pretty lights, which is cool. And they also advertise the software, which lets you change macros and stuff on your board, which, you know, that's kind of nice. But with lackluster switches and a lack of hot swappability, I got kind of bored and wanted to move on to the next keyboard. Now, the next keyboard is really interesting because it's been made by Keychron and comes in at just $36. Keychron makes some of my favorite good enough custom keyboards, so I'm pretty intrigued here. A gaming mechanical keyboard with endless possibilities. Endless possibilities, keep that in mind, because the possibilities are gonna be endless. Now, surely that tagline won't come back to bite them at all whatsoever. And at the same price point as the last board, I was expecting about the same experience here. This is from Keychron as well, so they have a lot of experience making pretty decent keyboards, and this one is more optimized for gaming somehow. You get a basic cable and a keycap and switch puller, which is great. And let's take a gander at this keyboard, which looks probably the most boring so far. Now, full disclosure, both of these Lemo keyboards were sent to me by Keychron, but I was gonna buy them anyways. What's interesting about this board is that it somehow feels more plasticky than all of the others. Like, it's incredibly lightweight, and the plastic finish on this thing just doesn't feel premium whatsoever, like especially that gloss. And then to add insult to injury, the keycaps are generic shine-through gamer font keycaps, and the visible white borders on the floating switch design really are not doing any justice to this thing. It feels and looks cheap. Now, I had to temper my expectations because this board was still 36 bucks, like it's, okay, so it feels fine, but it is pretty decently loud, and no thawk to be found anywhere. The brown switches also don't feel very tactile, so it kind of just feels like a scratchy linear switch. Like, Keychron has the capability of making really good switches, and I feel like they just kind of went with the cheapest option here to make their other keyboards look better. Or maybe it was to save money, I don't know, like they at least kind of lubed the stabilizers. But at least I can swap out the switches, right? Okay, so let me just take this switch out real fast and, why is it not budging? Why is it not hot swapping?
What? What about my endless possibilities?
Where are the endless possibilities? Okay, so with switches that you can't swap out, a pretty lackluster case, only red LED lighting, bad switches. I think the only saving grace for this thing is that the software is VIA, which is a great software for reprogramming your keyboard, very safe and open source. And they tested the polling rate to 1000 Hertz, which makes it guaranteed pretty decent for gaming. But when I buy a custom keyboard, I want to be able to customize it. And I also want it to have potential to sound good and feel good. And this just isn't it. Let's check out the next keyboard. This is the Jinming X87, or Magic Refiner AK873. It starts at 36 bucks, so it's priced literally the same as the Lemo key. This could be pretty damning if this thing is a little bit better. Now, this keyboard was hard to get an exact price read on because it kind of goes all over the place, but I found it as cheap as $32 in some places, which would make it cheaper than the other boards we just looked at. And at a quick glance, I was like, a coiled cable? There's no way. Why is it coming with the coiled cable? Huh? So already, this is the best accessories of any of the other things, and I also see a switch puller, which hopefully means we can actually pull the switches this time. Now, aesthetics are definitely subjective, but I think this is the prettiest board of the bunch. The purple and white and lavender keycaps are great, and it looks like some keyboards that I've seen going for an upwards of $100. Like, it just has a nice, cohesive design, and overall, I gotta know what's wrong with this thing. Like, what kind of skeletons are they hiding in this thing's closet? It says that it's hot swap on the product page. Like, what's going on? Now, it even says that this board is gasket mounted, which is a buzzword that you don't typically see until the $100 price bracket. So, what's going on here? Well, sometimes, you know how you get really excited about something, so then you just don't read anymore? I might have done that here. I might have done that. Now, the sound of this keyboard is nothing too special. Like, it's a little bit poppy, but the feel is actually the best of any of the keyboards on this list. Like, it felt incredibly smooth to type on, and I actually got one of my fastest typing tests on this thing. It also has separate modes for Windows and Mac, and I think a remnant of if this thing was wireless, because why would it have an on and off switch if it's not wireless? I'm a bit confused. Now, part of the reason that this board feels so decent to type on is probably these switches. Instead of just a basic Cherry MX Red style clone, it's just a little bit better. The switches are Otemu whites, which felt like they were well factory lubed and didn't have a lot of spring ping. Pretty nice. What's even nicer is that the product page said this board is hot swappable, so it's gonna be really easy to take these switches out. Come on. Now, at first I thought, okay, maybe it's just the switch puller, maybe I need to try something different, but the switches weren't coming out, and this thing said it was hot swappable. What? So then I had to get to the bottom of it, and I took this board apart, which was quite the endeavor. It's the standard, like, clips, so you have to be really strong, or use a tool, or be really strong and use a tool like me. Once I got the board open, it revealed this really nice gasket mount, and I remembered that Jinming is actually the manufacturer of the Wilmir SK71, which is a board that I like quite a lot for other budget purposes. Now, the easiest way to find out if a board is hot swap is just to look, so then I pulled off the foam and... Huh. What? You're serious, right? That's not hot swap. What? Wait. No way. Okay. There is a hot swap socket on the stabilizers, but that's it. What? Like, this is when I realized it was partially my fault and partially the product page for being really misleading. Like, it says 5-key TTC shaft seat hot swappable. In my brain, I read that as 5-pin, but what they meant was 5 keys. Like, you get to hot swap 5 keys, and the rest, you're screwed. So anyways, with that being said, this board is really pretty. The keycaps are really pretty. The switches are decent, and you can't customize it. But hey, at least it has RGB. Well, actually, no, it has fake RGB, like the one where certain rows are certain color LEDs. So then it was time to take this thing over to the garbage. I mean, my pile of keyboards. And then I'm going to give you a 30-second rundown on the Lemokey X3, because originally I was going to skip it, and then I realized it's actually different in more ways than just the layout. Instead of the floating switch design, it has a full case and of course a numpad. It's also got a totally different case design in general, which leaves the whole entire board feeling a little bit more solid and a little bit more elegant to type on. However, it also costs $50 instead of the $36, and despite having the same switches and of course not being hot swappable, this version felt a lot more quiet and just a little bit better. So I think they're doing something else here under the hood maybe. But I still really wouldn't recommend it unless you absolutely want VIA software or the guaranteed 1000 Hertz polling rate, because it's just kind of It's just And now it was time for the final keyboard, and editor blur my feet. Anyways, I saved the best for last. So last but not least, we have the keyboard that I'm most excited for. And this keyboard comes in at $50 US, because this is the Hexgears M2. And you're gonna wanna stick around till the end, because this could just be the best keyboard yet. Whoa. You remember how with the first keyboard I said it's a good option because you can buy it for 25 bucks and then spend 25 bucks to upgrade the switches? Well, this is that, but they also upgraded other things. Now, it's got the same basic stuff that every other keyboard has, like a keycap and... Oh wait, that's a nice switch puller. This thing has to be hot swap, right? And it also has these mysterious green switches if you can read Chinese. Please, tell me what they are. Now, for 50 bucks, I was expecting a Thawkey keyboard, or at least a keyboard that sounded a little bit better than the others. Like, we have to at least get one Thawkey keyboard out of this whole bunch, right? Now, the first thing I noticed is these flatter profile keycaps, which might be really bad for some people. Like, honestly, I found them a little bit hard to type on. But I feel like with a couple weeks, then you could definitely get, you could get used to this gasket mounting. Wait, what? Why is there so much flex? Now, again, these keyboards are very cheap, so I'm not treating them at the same caliber I would treat a fancy $100 or $200 custom keyboard. There's obviously things that are wrong with them, but I'm trying to stay pretty positive here overall. I think anytime you spend half as much for something, you should expect half as much of something. But these stabilizers feel really well lubed. I think my biggest gripe here so far is with the multi-tiered case design. Like, the front sticking out like that just looks kind of gross, albeit a little bit unique. Everything else about it is just kind of plain and plastic, and it's got a little cable run for your cables. Now, here's where it starts to get really weird though, because did you notice there was something off about these keycaps? Well, they're shine-through keycaps. They don't look like they're shine-through keycaps, but as we'll find out later, they actually are. Kind of insane. They're also double shot and feel relatively nice as well. Like, what are these guys doing making decent keycaps? But the real star of the show here are these green Kale switches. And yeah, I magically learned how to read Chinese and or a product page. They're pretty well factory lubed. They sound pretty stinking deep, or Thawkey. And they're the best switches of any of these boards that we've tried yet today. Same with the stabilizers. Very good for plate mounted stabilizers. And the best part, what? And the best part, there we go, hot swappable, yeah! This means that while these switches are very good for being a budget keyboard, you could swap them out for even better switches like the Wuche Studios Mirandis or something like that later in the future. But with north-facing LEDs, you'll have to be careful on which switches you use. Now, because this keyboard seemed to be the most promising overall, I wanted to see if it was actually customizable as well, so I was gonna take it apart. Now, it's definitely super annoying like all of the other keyboards to take apart, but this does let you see the gasket mounts, and wait, there wasn't even case foam in there? Oh my god! Now, as you'll see later in the typing test, this board sounds pretty stinking good, and that's with only plate foam. Like, no case foam, no tape mod. There's a lot of potential here. And in my opinion, I think the best thing you can get in a budget keyboard is potential, because it's a great way to get into the hobby, but then also customize your keyboard and learn what you like the most about it. Also, yeah, the shine-through keycaps, I see why people don't make shine-through keycaps like this. They kind of look absolutely terrible with the lights on. Yikes. Also, keep watching after the typing test because I'm going to tell you which keyboard is the best. Now, I did only look at 6 keyboards today, but I feel like this will be really helpful for you at home to choose which keyboard works the best for you. Now, interestingly enough, the best keyboards in my opinion are the cheapest and the most expensive here, with everything in the middle kind of being a bit lackluster. Like, if you're on an Omega budget, go with the $25 keyboard, upgrade it later. Like, it's not gonna be great, but it also does have some decent potential. And if you absolutely have to keep your budget under $50, then the Hexgears M2 is really decent actually. Like, I was really pleasantly surprised. The Lemo keyboards could be good if your only focus is gaming and don't care about typing feel or sound, but if this got you into the gateway drug of mechanical keyboards, then check out some of my other beginner's guides. Good luck.